The silence that followed the transmission was more devastating than the words themselves. Alina's augmented neural interface flickered, the last remnants of alien communication technology burning out in a cascade of dying circuits. Around her, the command center transformed from a high-tech nerve center to something more primal, a war room of survival. Specialist Kai Chen, a quantum communications expert, was already salvaging what he could. His fingers danced across multiple holographic interfaces, stripping down the alien communication protocols and extracting every last bit of data. "They didn't just cut us off," he muttered. "They tried to erase our entire technological foundation." A massive screen displayed a real-time map of global systems. Red indicators spread like a virus, showing the systematic shutdown of alien-derived technologies. Satellites winked out. Advanced transportation networks ground to a halt. Medical systems that relied on xenobiological interfaces began to fail, threatening millions. But humanity had always been best when cornered. In Tokyo, Dr. Aisha Okoro watched as the emergency protocols she had developed years ago began to activate. A network of distributed quantum servers, hidden in plain sight across multiple continents, started to come online. These weren't just backup systems. They were a contingency plan decades in the making, designed to activate the moment human technological sovereignty was threatened. "Initiate Protocol Prometheus," she spoke softly into her communicator. Thousands of kilometers away in a nondescript research facility in the Brazilian Amazon, a team of engineers and scientists began their own sequence. They weren't waiting for instructions from global leadership. They were acting on decades of preparation, on a mission that predated the current crisis by generations. The alien confederation believed they understood humanity. They saw the conflicts, the environmental challenges, the political divisions. What they didn't see was the underlying current of human resilience, the ability to transform crisis into opportunity. Alina's neural interface began to stabilize. The military-grade backup systems were nothing like the alien technologies they had been using. These were purely human, developed in secret, tested in the most challenging environments on Earth and beyond. She began receiving fragmented reports from around the globe. In the Arctic research stations, teams were already repurposing communication equipment. Fusion research facilities in India were converting their experimental reactors to emergency power grids. Space exploration centers in the United States were activating contingency protocols that had been developed during the early days of interstellar exploration. The Zorian ambassador's proclamation echoed in Alina's mind. A pandemic, he had called humanity. But pandemics adapt. Pandemics survive. Specialist Chen approached her with a data crystal. "Captain, you need to see this. The communication logs, they're not just a shutdown protocol. There's something else embedded in the transmission." Alina took the crystal, her cybernetic implant interfacing directly with the data storage. What she saw was not a simple shutdown sequence, but a complex information package. The aliens hadn't just tried to isolate humanity. They were sending a message, a final judgment encoded in quantum encrypted data. "They want us to know why," Chen said, his voice a mixture of professional detachment and barely contained anger. The holographic display shifted, showing a comprehensive breakdown of human activities across multiple star systems. Every conflict, every technological misstep, every moment of potential destruction was laid bare. The Confederation had been watching, cataloging, judging, but they had missed something fundamental. In the underground research complexes, in the orbital research stations still maintaining their own power, in the distributed networks spanning continents, humanity was already moving. This wasn't surrender. This was preparation. Alina looked at the fragmented galactic map, her augmented eyes processing information at speeds that would have been impossible just years ago. The alien confederation thought they were closing a door. In reality, they were opening something far more dangerous. A smile began to form at the corner of her mouth. Let them think they've won. Outside the command center, the first waves of systematic global reorganization were already beginning. Governments were merging resources, Research institutions were consolidating. The most brilliant minds were being brought together not through bureaucratic mandates, but through a collective understanding. Survival was no longer just an option. It was becoming an art form. The galaxy had made its choice. Now humanity would make theirs. The Great Stripping was more than a technological apocalypse. It was a crucible of human innovation. In the ruins of a former quantum computing center in Nairobi, Dr. Imani Okeke stood surrounded by what most would consider wreckage. Shattered alien-derived processors littered the floor, their once intricate circuitry now nothing more than expensive scrap. But Imani saw potential where others saw destruction. "Show me your secrets," she whispered, her augmented hands already disassembling a particularly complex neural interface. Her team worked with a precision born of desperation. They weren't just reverse engineering alien technology. They were dissecting its fundamental essence. Each failed system was a lesson. Each destroyed component was a blueprint for something new. Halfway across the world, in the deep-sea research platforms off the coast of Chile, an entirely different battle was unfolding. Dr. Rafael Morales watched as the marine-based communication networks collapsed. Sophisticated underwater quantum relays, which had once connected global research stations, went dark one by one. But darkness was just an opportunity for light. Morales had been preparing for this moment his entire career. The marine research platforms were more than scientific outposts. They were now lifeboats of human knowledge. Sealed environmental systems, independent power generation, complete isolation capabilities. "Initiate deep dive protocol," he commanded. The platforms began to transform. Modular sections sealed themselves. Redundant systems activated. What had once been open research centers became self-contained ecosystems, each capable of surviving and continuing critical research for decades if necessary. In the Arctic Research Station, Dr. Elena Volka faced a different challenge. The alien-derived medical nanobots that had revolutionized healthcare were failing. Millions of patients worldwide depended on these microscopic systems for everything from cancer treatment to genetic repair. "We're not losing anyone," she muttered, pulling up holographic displays of nanobot schematics. Her team worked with a fury that defied exhaustion. They weren't just trying to replace the alien technology. They were reimagining medical intervention from its most fundamental level. Every failed nanobot was studied. Every breakdown was an opportunity to understand and improve. The global communication networks told a different story of resistance. In a converted shopping mall in Mumbai, a collective of young programmers and network engineers had turned the entire building into a communication warfare center. Led by Priya Sharma, a 23-year-old network prodigy, they were doing something unprecedented. They weren't trying to restore the old communication systems. They were building something entirely new. Quantum entanglement networks that didn't rely on traditional transmission methods. Communication protocols that could adapt and self-repair. Information pathways that could navigate around technological blockades. "We're not fighting the system," Priya told her team. "We're evolving past it." Deep beneath the Australian outback, a different kind of preparation was happening. Major Sandra Williams oversaw a project that most would consider impossible. They were constructing a global network of underground research and survival complexes. These weren't just shelters. They were seeds of a potential human civilization. Each complex was a self-contained ecosystem, capable of supporting hundreds of researchers, engineers, and their families. With independent power generation, advanced hydroponics, and manufacturing capabilities that could produce everything from computer chips to medical supplies. The alien confederation thought they were cutting humanity off. In reality, they were forcing human ingenuity into overdrive. Back in Nairobi, Dr. Imani Okeke made a breakthrough. The alien processor she had been studying wasn't just a piece of technology. It was a puzzle, and she was beginning to understand its language. "We're not just going to replace their technology," she announced to her team. "We're going to understand it so completely that we'll make it look like a child's toy." Across the planet, In research centers, underground complexes, marine platforms, and improvised communication hubs, humanity was doing what it did best: adapting, evolving, preparing. The Great Stripping was not an ending. It was a beginning. The transformation wasn't a process. It was a revolution. In the heart of Sao Paulo, what was once a competitive business landscape became a living, breathing collaborative network. The headquarters of former rival tech companies now shared a single massive complex. Walls between research departments dissolved, literally and metaphorically. Dr. Carlos Mendes stood at the center of this new ecosystem. A veteran biotechnology researcher who had spent decades navigating corporate politics, he now found himself leading something unprecedented. The Global Innovation Collective wasn't a company. It wasn't even an organization. It was a living organism of human potential. Information is no longer a commodity, he told the assembled researchers from dozens of former competing institutions. It's our collective lifeline. The transformation extended far beyond technological collaboration. In the agricultural zones of the Punjab region, farmers who had once competed for market share now worked as a unified agricultural research network. Traditional knowledge merged with cutting-edge biotechnology. Ancient farming techniques were re-examined through the lens of global survival. Aisha Kumar, a third-generation farmer turned bioengineering researcher, demonstrated a new crop system that could grow in multiple environments. We're not just developing food, she explained to a group of international researchers. We're creating resilience. The educational system underwent its most radical transformation in human history. Traditional university boundaries collapsed. A student in Lagos could simultaneously attend lectures from professors in Tokyo, New York, and Buenos Aires. Learning became a global, continuous process. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, an educational systems designer, had developed a neural-linked learning platform that went beyond traditional education. We're not just sharing information, she said. We're creating a collective human intelligence. The military underwent its most profound metamorphosis. Gone were the days of national armed forces. The global defense network was something entirely different. It wasn't about conquest or protection. It was about human survival and potential. Colonel Marcus Webb, who had once been a traditional military strategist, now coordinated a network of researchers, engineers, and strategic thinkers from every continent. Their mission wasn't territorial defense. It was species preservation and advancement. We're not preparing for war, he told his diverse team during a global strategy session. We're preparing for our next evolutionary leap. In the Arctic research stations, climate scientists who had once worked in isolated teams now shared a unified research complex. The challenges of environmental adaptation became a global priority. Every breakthrough was immediately shared across the network. Dr. Elena Volkov, standing before a holographic display of global environmental models, realized they were doing more than studying climate change. They were designing humanity's future habitat strategy. The financial systems transformed beyond recognition. Cryptocurrency evolved into something far more sophisticated, a global resource allocation network that prioritized innovation, research, and collective human potential over individual wealth accumulation. Zara Rodriguez, a young economist from Mexico City, had developed an entirely new economic model. We're not measuring value in currency, she explained during a global economic forum. We're measuring it in human potential and collective advancement. In the underground research complexes, artists worked alongside scientists. Cultural preservation became as critical as technological innovation. Museums became living archives, not just of human history, but of human potential. Malik Abdullah, a documentary filmmaker turned cultural preservation specialist, was creating immersive historical experiences. We're not just saving our past, he said. We're creating a narrative of human resilience. The medical research networks became a true global collaboration. Researchers from different disciplines, previously separated by institutional boundaries, now worked on integrated health solutions. A neurologist in Berlin would collaborate in real time with a geneticist in Mumbai and a biomechanical engineer in Seoul. Dr. Priya Sharma, who had previously led the communication network reconstruction, now coordinated a global health innovation platform. Every human is a potential solution, she would often say. The global transformation wasn't about survival. It was about becoming something more. Humanity wasn't just adapting. It was redefining what it meant to be a collective species. The crucible of necessity had become the forge of human potential. The Atacama Desert Research Complex wasn't just a facility. It was humanity's most audacious experiment. Dr. Arya Chen stood before a holographic projection that defied everything known about quantum mechanics. The device before her, code-named Nexus, represented a breakthrough that would have been considered impossible just months ago. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a communication device. It was something far more fundamental. "We're not just bending the rules of physics," she muttered to her assistant, Dr. Miguel Rodriguez. "We're rewriting the underlying code of reality itself." Nexus was the culmination of research that had been brewing in the shadows for decades, a collaborative project that drew from disciplines as diverse as quantum physics, neurological engineering, and theoretical cosmology. Each component had been developed in isolation, believing it was part of a different project. Only now were they seeing the true potential of their collective work. Thousands of kilometers away, in the depths of the Mariana Trench, another revolution was taking shape. The deep-sea research platform had transformed into something beyond a mere scientific outpost. Dr. Camille Okuro's team was developing bioadaptive environmental systems that could fundamentally change how humanity interacted with extreme environments. Their latest breakthrough was a living habitat module, part engineering, part biological organism. It could self-repair, adapt to changing conditions, and generate its own resources. "We're not designing a habitat," Okuro explained during a global research briefing. "We're creating a symbiotic living system." In the orbital research stations that had managed to maintain independence, a different kind of innovation was happening. Led by Commander Sarah Nakamura, the team was developing propulsion technologies that didn't just challenge current understanding. They obliterated it. The quantum drive prototype looked nothing like traditional spacecraft engines. It was a delicate lattice of materials that seemed to exist between states of matter. "Traditional propulsion is about pushing," Nakamura told her team. "We're learning to fold space instead." Back in the Atacama, Dr. Chen made another adjustment to the Nexus system. The device was a quantum information processor that did more than calculate. It predicted, but not in the way traditional predictive models worked. This was something entirely different. "It's reading potential," Miguel observed, watching the holographic displays shift and pulse with impossible complexity. The device could analyze multiple potential outcomes simultaneously, not just as probabilities, but as living information streams. It was less a computer and more a living probability engine that could interface directly with human consciousness. In the underground research complexes beneath the Australian outback, a breakthrough in neural interface technology was redefining human potential. Dr. Yara Williams had developed a neural network that could not just read brain signals, but interpret and enhance human cognitive capabilities. Test subjects were showing unprecedented levels of pattern recognition, problem solving, and creative thinking. It wasn't about augmentation. It was about unlocking potential that had always existed but remained dormant. The geological research centers in Iceland were developing something equally revolutionary. By combining advanced materials science with deep geological understanding, they were creating adaptive infrastructure technologies, buildings that could self-modify based on environmental conditions, infrastructure that could heal itself, adapt, and evolve. Dr. Lars Peterson demonstrated a prototype building material that could restructure its molecular composition in real time. "We're not just building structures," he explained. "We're creating living environments." In the agricultural research zones of the Punjab, a breakthrough in genetic engineering was taking shape. But this wasn't about modifying crops. It was about creating entire ecosystems that could adapt to changing environmental conditions. Dr. Aisha Kumar's team had developed seed systems that could communicate with each other, sharing environmental data and adaptive strategies. A wheat field was no longer just a collection of plants. It was a living, communicative network. The whispers of defiance were becoming a roar of innovation. Humanity wasn't just adapting. It was reimagining what was possible. In the Atacama Research Complex, Dr. Chen made a final adjustment to the Nexus system. The holographic display flickered, then stabilized. Something was emerging. Something unprecedented. The galaxy had walked away, but humanity was just getting started. The resistance wasn't a movement. It was a living network. Deep beneath the streets of Buenos Aires, in a converted subway network that had become humanity's most sophisticated intelligence hub, Valentina Rodriguez reviewed the latest quantum communication intercepts. Her team wasn't just gathering information. They were weaving a tapestry of human potential that spanned the entire planet. Each member of the underground network was more than an operative. They were nodes in a living, breathing intelligence system that defied traditional understanding of communication and strategy. "We're not hiding," Valentina told her core team during their daily briefing. "We're preparing the groundwork for our next evolutionary step." The communication network they had developed was nothing like traditional intelligence gathering. It used quantum entanglement principles that made traditional interception impossible. Information flowed like a living organism, changing state the moment it was observed, adapting continuously. In the remote research stations of Patagonia, Dr. Marcus Alvarez was developing something far more subtle than a traditional weapon. His team had created a series of information vectors, complex data structures that could infiltrate and subtly modify alien technological systems. "We're not going to fight them with brute force," he explained to his team. "We're going to understand them so completely that their own technologies will become our allies." The resistance had multiple layers. Some worked on direct technological infiltration. Others focused on cultural preservation and knowledge distribution. A group led by cultural anthropologist Dr. Amara Diop was creating comprehensive archives of human potential, not just historical records, but living databases of human creativity, innovation, and resilience. "Our greatest weapon is our story," Diop would often say. "Not just what we've done, but what we're capable of becoming." In the Arctic Research Complex, a different kind of preparation was happening. The team led by Dr. Elena Volkov was developing adaptive camouflage technologies that went beyond mere visual concealment. These were systems that could blend into multiple environmental and technological contexts. Their latest breakthrough was a material that could dynamically adapt its molecular structure, rendering it undetectable by any known scanning technology. It wasn't just about hiding. It was about becoming invisible by understanding the fundamental nature of observation itself. The resistance had a philosophical dimension that went beyond traditional military or technological strategy. They were developing a comprehensive understanding of alien psychology, technological limitations, and communication patterns. A specialized team of linguists, psychologists, and cynobiological experts worked to decode not just the language of the alien confederation, but the underlying thought patterns that drove their decision-making. Dr. Kai Chen, who had previously worked on quantum communication systems, now led a team that was developing predictive models of alien behavior. They weren't just analyzing data. They were creating living simulations that could anticipate potential alien responses with unprecedented accuracy. In the underground complexes beneath the Australian outback, a different kind of resistance was taking shape. Here, they were developing technologies that could survive and potentially thrive in environments that would be considered impossible by current scientific understanding. Bioengineering teams were creating adaptive human physiology prototypes. Not genetic modifications in the traditional sense, but comprehensive biological systems that could rapidly adapt to extreme environmental conditions. The resistance had a distributed leadership structure that defied traditional hierarchical models. No single point of failure existed. Each node in the network was both autonomous and interconnected, capable of making critical decisions while maintaining a holistic understanding of the larger strategy. Valentina Rodriguez's communication hub in Buenos Aires was the closest thing to a central coordination point. But even this was more of a living network than a traditional command center. During one of their strategic sessions, a holographic display showed the intricate connections between research centers, communication nodes, and adaptive technology development sites. It looked less like a military strategy map and more like a living, pulsing organism. "We're not just preparing for a potential conflict," Valentina told her team. "We're creating the foundation for humanity's next great leap." The whispers of resistance were becoming a symphony of potential. The galaxy might have walked away, but humanity was just beginning to understand its true nature. Something was coming. Something unprecedented. The first appearance was nothing like anyone expected. Across the galaxy, in strategic points that seemed to defy conventional spacetime, human vessels materialized. But they weren't ships in any traditional sense. They were living systems, complex organic technological hybrids that seemed to breathe and pulse with an intelligence beyond mechanical design. Admiral Zara Chen watched from the central observation deck of the Horizon Prime, a vessel that was part spaceship, part quantum computing matrix, part living organism. Her neural interface hummed with information streams that would have driven a traditional mind to sensory overload. The alien early warning systems didn't just fail. They became confused. On the Zorian primary monitoring station, Chief Sensor Coordinator Vexna watched in growing terror as the human vessels seemed to simultaneously exist and not exist. Traditional scanning methods produced nothing. No energy signatures, no mass readings, no standard propulsion indicators. It was as if reality itself was being rewritten. Each human vessel carried more than technology. They were mobile ecosystems, complete research facilities, adaptive habitats, and strategic platforms rolled into living, breathing entities. The Horizon Prime alone contained complete agricultural systems, medical research facilities, quantum computing centers, and cultural preservation archives. "We're not an invasion," Zara murmured to her primary communication specialist. "We're a civilization in motion." The vessels didn't approach alien territories with aggression. They positioned themselves with a mathematical precision that suggested something far more complex than traditional navigation. Each location was carefully selected, not for strategic military advantage, but for maximum information exchange potential. On the Rigel Prime Research Station, a small human communication module appeared. It didn't broadcast traditional signals. Instead, it began to emit a complex quantum information matrix that seemed to rewrite the station's communication protocols from within. Dr. Alejandro Morales, leading the communication interface team, had spent years developing this approach. "We're not talking to them," he explained to his team. "We're creating a new language of mutual understanding." The module began to transform the station's communication systems, not by force, but by introducing a more efficient information processing model. Alien technicians watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as their systems began to integrate with something entirely new. In the Carina Nebula, another human vessel appeared near a major alien scientific outpost. Instead of weapons or defensive systems, it began to broadcast comprehensive scientific archives. Millions of years of human research, cultural development, and technological innovation were shared in a quantum information burst that defied traditional communication methods. The alien scientists couldn't look away. This wasn't just information. It was a comprehensive view of human potential. Vexna's monitoring station received the first comprehensive report. The human vessels weren't just present in multiple locations. They seemed to be creating localized quantum information networks that rewrote the fundamental communication infrastructure wherever they appeared. "They're not invading," Vexna reported to the High Council. "They're integrating." The Horizon Prime's most radical feature wasn't its technological capabilities. It was the diversity of its crew. Scientists worked alongside artists. Cultural preservationists collaborated with quantum physicists. Military strategists developed projects with ecological restoration experts. Each crew member was a living testament to humanity's collaborative potential. In the Andromeda Research Corridor, a human vessel appeared near a major alien diplomatic hub. Instead of traditional diplomatic communication, it began to broadcast immersive cultural experiences. Entire alien researchers found themselves experiencing human history, not through dry historical records, but through living, emotional narratives that challenged their entire understanding of consciousness. Admiral Zara Chen made a final adjustment to the Horizon Prime's quantum communication matrix. The vessel pulsed with a complexity that defied traditional understanding. They weren't here to conquer. They were here to connect. The galaxy had walked away, but humanity had been preparing for this moment all along. Something unprecedented was about to happen. The transmission began not with words, but with experience. On the central communication hub of the Galactic Confederation, a quantum information matrix materialized. It wasn't a message in any traditional sense. It was a living narrative, a comprehensive demonstration of human potential that defied every existing communication protocol. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, lead architect of the Humanity Narrative Project, had spent years preparing this moment. This wasn't propaganda. This was a raw, unfiltered exploration of what it meant to be human. The first layer was geological. The Confederation watched as they experienced humanity's relationship with Earth, not through scientific data, but through a multisensory journey. They felt the geological formation of continents, experienced the rise and fall of ecosystems, understood the planet not as a resource, but as a living, dynamic system that humans had learned to both understand and respect. Then came the cultural narrative. Thousands of individual human experiences cascaded through the communication matrix. A child's first steps in a refugee camp in Sudan, a breakthrough moment in a research laboratory in Tokyo, the last breath of a hospice patient surrounded by loved ones in Brazil, the creation of a piece of music that captured an entire emotional landscape. The alien analysts found themselves unable to categorize these experiences. They were simultaneous and contradictory, brutal and beautiful, destructive and regenerative. Dr. Kai Chen, who had developed the communication matrix, watched from the Horizon Prime. "We're not trying to convince them," he told his team. "We're trying to help them understand." The narrative shifted. Now they experienced human technological development, but not as a linear progression. Instead, they saw it as a complex, adaptive system. They watched how human innovation emerged from constraint, how limitations became the catalyst for breakthrough. A research team developing sustainable agriculture in a drought-stricken region. Engineers creating communication systems in areas with no existing infrastructure. Medical researchers developing treatments with minimal resources. The Confederation's lead cynoanthropologist, analyst Prime Tartak, found herself experiencing something unprecedented. These weren't just technological achievements. They were expressions of a fundamental philosophical approach to existence. The narrative continued. They experienced human conflict, not as a demonstration of violence, but as a complex system of social negotiation. They saw how humans resolved differences, how they built bridges across seemingly insurmountable cultural divides. A peace negotiation in a war-torn region, a community rebuilding after a natural disaster. Scientists from competing nations collaborating on a global challenge. The communication matrix began to reveal its true nature. It wasn't just sharing information. It was creating a living, breathing understanding of human potential. Dr. Rodriguez made a final adjustment to the transmission. The next layer would be the most challenging. Philosophical and existential understanding. The aliens experienced humanity's approach to consciousness, not as a fixed state, but as a dynamic, evolving system. They saw how humans continually questioned their own existence, how they embraced uncertainty as a fundamental aspect of understanding. Philosophers debating the nature of consciousness, artists exploring the boundaries of perception, researchers pushing the limits of scientific understanding. Tartak realized something profound. Humanity wasn't a species to be feared or contained. They were a fundamental force of adaptation and potential. The final layer of the transmission was unexpected. Instead of a declaration or a threat, it was an invitation to understand, to connect, to explore the potential of collective intelligence beyond species boundaries. The transmission ended, but its impact was just beginning. On the Horizon Prime, Dr. Chen looked at Dr. Rodriguez. "They're listening," he said quietly. "No," she responded. "They're understanding." The galaxy had walked away, but humanity had found a way to bring them back. Something extraordinary was about to happen. Transformation is rarely a singular moment. It's a cascade of possibilities. The Galactic Confluence Chamber, a massive, crystalline structure that served as the central gathering point for the Confederation's most critical discussions, fell silent. Delegates from thousands of civilizations sat suspended in quantum-stabilized environments, processing the human narrative that had fundamentally altered their understanding of existence. Analyst Prime Xartok stood at the central platform, her tentacular appendages moving in complex patterns that betrayed deep emotional turbulence. The comprehensive transmission from humanity had done more than communicate. It had challenged the very foundations of galactic civilization. "We did not see them." Xartok spoke, her translation matrix converting her thoughts into multiple linguistic frameworks simultaneously. "We merely observed their surface." The holographic displays around the chamber continued to replay fragments of the human narrative. A child learning to read in a remote village. A team of researchers solving a complex environmental challenge. Musicians creating art that transcended linguistic barriers. Philosophers questioning the nature of consciousness. Each civilization's representative experienced the transmission differently. For some, it was a revelation. For others, a profound existential challenge. The quantum diplomatic interface, a complex communication system developed specifically for this moment, began to process the collective response. It wasn't a simple yes or no. It was a living, dynamic negotiation of potential. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from the Horizon Prime, her neural interface tracking the multidimensional communication streams. She understood something the Confederation had missed. This wasn't about acceptance. It was about mutual evolution. On the observation deck, Admiral Zara Chen made a subtle adjustment to the vessel's quantum communication matrix. "We're not waiting for their decision," she told her team. "We're creating a new framework of interaction." The human vessels that had appeared across multiple star systems weren't static. They continued to interact with local scientific and cultural infrastructures, not through invasion or domination, but through collaborative exchange. Research stations found themselves receiving complex scientific insights. Cultural archives were enriched by human perspective. Some alien civilizations reacted with fear, others with curiosity. A few with a profound sense of intellectual excitement. The Rigelian Science Consortium was the first to make a formal response. Instead of diplomatic language, they sent a comprehensive research proposal. A joint exploration of consciousness, technological adaptation, and interspecies communication. Dr. Alejandro Morales, who had developed the initial communication matrix, recognized this for what it was: an invitation to a deeper conversation. The transformation wasn't happening at a governmental level. It was occurring in research stations, cultural exchange centers, and collaborative platforms across multiple star systems. Young researchers from different species began to develop joint research initiatives. Cultural exchange programs emerged spontaneously. The rigid boundaries between civilizations started to blur. Xartok's final report to the Galactic Confluence was unlike any diplomatic communication in galactic history. Humanity is not a species to be contained or understood through traditional frameworks. They are a dynamic system of potential. Their greatest strength is not their technology, not their resilience, but their capacity for continuous reinvention. The human vessels continued their journey. Each was a living ecosystem, a research center, a cultural archive, and a potential bridge between civilizations. Admiral Chen made a final observation to her team. "We're not just exploring the galaxy," she said. "We're creating a new way of existing within it. The Horizon Prime pulsed with a complex energy that seemed to exist between technological and organic states. It was more than a vessel. It was a living demonstration of human potential. As the galactic communication networks continued to process the human narrative, something fundamental was changing. The old boundaries were dissolving. A new understanding was emerging. The galaxy had walked away, but humanity had found a way to bring everyone back to the conversation. Something extraordinary was happening. And it was just the beginning.